The last stand at the Galactic Council. The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council was a place of supposed unity, a vast hall where civilizations across the stars debated, negotiated, and decided the fate of the galaxy. Its crystalline dome gleamed under the light of twin suns, casting fragmented beams upon the floating platforms of delegates from 1,000 different worlds. The air buzzed with hushed murmurs, a barely contained storm of uncertainty rippling through the chamber. At the heart of the chamber, Ambassador Elias Carter of the United Terran Republic stood alone. His expression was unreadable, stoic, unwavering. He was humanity's final voice in this assembly of distant stars, a man who had spent decades trying to prove that humans belonged here, that they could be equals among the stars. That dream had shattered. He took a slow breath, letting the silence stretch. Every eye was on him now. The council expected another plea, another desperate appeal for fairness. Instead, Carter reached into his pocket and placed a small holo-emitter onto the podium. A shimmering field of light flickered into existence, revealing a live feed of the Sol system. The sight of thousands of human vessels preparing to depart sent a ripple of shock through the assembled aliens. The council leader, High Arbitrator Velkin of the Sereth Dominion, a towering being with silver-hued skin and piercing violet eyes, leaned forward. His voice was calm, but there was an underlying tension in his tone. "Ambassador Carter, surely we can reach a compromise. Let us discuss this further before such drastic measures are taken." Carter's lips curled into a faint, humorless smile. He had expected this. For 50 years, humanity had played their game. They had followed the Council's endless bureaucracy, abided by their restrictions, and entertained the illusion of cooperation. And in return, stagnation, subjugation, manipulation. His voice, when it came, was steady, firm. "There is nothing left to discuss, High Arbitrator. We are done." Another holo-display activated above him, revealing data charts, maps of restricted territories, trade agreements that had bound humanity in chains. For decades, we have sought fairness. We were promised an equal seat at this table, but instead, we were placed under constant surveillance, treated as an upstart species to be contained. Our colonies were limited. Our trade was stifled. Our technology was siphoned away while we received nothing in return. He gestured toward the screens. The evidence was damning. A meticulous record of every trade manipulation, every unjust policy, every silent act of sabotage committed against humanity. Some representatives shifted uncomfortably in their seats, while others outright sneered. They had never expected humanity to put the pieces together. And yet we complied. Carter continued, not out of weakness, but because we were watching, learning, preparing. Murmurs erupted into outright shouting. Some council members protested, others demanded explanations, but Carter remained impassive. "Your mistake," he said, letting the words hang in the air, "was assuming that we would remain content as pawns in your game. We will no longer play by your rules." He pressed a single button. A final declaration appeared above him, translated into every galactic language. "The United Terran Republic hereby withdraws from the Galactic Council, effective immediately." The silence was deafening. The council leader's face darkened. "This is reckless. The consequences will be yours to face," Carter cut in. "Humanity is leaving. Every treaty, every agreement, every alliance, we are dissolving them. As of this moment, our ships, our people, our technology are returning to Sol. We are closing our borders. You will not trade with us, you will not speak to us, and you will not control us." He turned toward the exit. The moment his foot crossed the threshold, he knew. The galaxy had changed forever. 3 days later, the first signs. The first real shock to the galaxy came in the form of silence. Human trade hubs shut down overnight. Stations that once bustled with life became ghost towns. Earth's famous commodities, advanced medicine, rare spices, entertainment, and high-efficiency starship components vanished from the markets. Prices skyrocketed. The Galactic Stock Exchange suffered its worst collapse in centuries. The economic collapse was only the beginning. At the Proxima trade station, a small rotund alien merchant named Galka stood outside the now-abandoned Earth Cafe, staring at the darkened windows. Tom, the human owner, was gone. A fellow merchant, a four-eyed Erdaxian, muttered, "They're really leaving." Galka turned to him, voice uncertain. "They can't. We need them." But the truth was already setting in. The galaxy had come to rely on humanity more than they had ever admitted. And now, they were gone. 1 week later, the military void. If the economic collapse was shocking, the military void was terrifying. Human patrol fleets withdrew from key trade routes. The Orion defense line, once secured by human-led forces, was abandoned. Pirates, long kept at bay, struck within days. Merchant ships were raided. Cargo vessels were stolen. A single Terran patrol ship had once deterred entire pirate armadas. Now, without them, the galaxy burned. Admiral Kef Arvin of the Vor Coalition Defense Fleet reviewed the latest intelligence reports, his mandibles clicking anxiously. Another attack. The Centauri trade route has fallen to raiders. His second-in-command, a young officer, gulped. "Sir, we can't hold these territories. Not without human support." Keth clenched his jaw. That was the reality they now faced. For decades, the Council had seen humanity as a useful tool, an expendable resource, but they had overlooked a simple truth. Humanity was the linchpin that had held galactic stability together. Now, without them, everything was falling apart. The final revelation. The greatest shock came not from the economy, nor from the military collapse, but from something far worse. Deep space sensors detected an anomaly at the edge of Sol space. Every approach vector to Earth, Mars, and their colonies was now encased in an impenetrable energy field. The shield, a barrier of unknown origin, impervious to scans, weapons, or probes. Alien ships gathered in confusion. Scientists puzzled over its construction, and intelligence agencies scrambled for answers. But there was only one truth. Humanity hadn't just left the galaxy. They had sealed themselves away. And whatever they were doing behind the shield, the galaxy wasn't ready for it. Not at all. The galaxy trembles in humanity's absence. 1 week after humanity's departure, the fracturing begins. The Galactic Council chamber, once a place of absolute control and order, had become a battlefield of its own. The holographic screens flickered with live feeds from every sector of the galaxy, economic meltdowns, corporate collapses, trade route disruptions, and the increasing wave of pirate attacks. Every corner of civilization was beginning to feel the repercussions of humanity's withdrawal. High Arbitrator Velkin stood at the head of the chamber, his usual composed demeanor crumbling under the weight of the crisis. His voice, sharp and demanding, cut through the chaos. "We need immediate action. We cannot allow this instability to continue." A reptilian delegate from the Xerath Dominion slammed his clawed fist onto his podium. "Action. Action. We are already seeing the consequences of this mistake." His red eyes blazed as he gestured to a holo report displaying the catastrophic collapse of 3 major trading networks. Human industries accounted for 27% of the galactic economy. Now their resources are gone. "Do you expect us to survive this?" An avian diplomat from the Zerani Concord clicked her beak, her feathers flaring in frustration. "It's worse than that. Our food production systems relied on Terran agricultural enhancements. Crops are failing. Supply lines are in shambles. Entire colonies could starve." Another diplomat, this one from the Arcturus Federation, stood with an eerie calm. His species, tall, lean, and bioengineered for cold logic, had been the least affected. But even he could not ignore reality. "This instability threatens the Council's existence. We have underestimated the humans." Gravely, a hush settled over the chamber. For the first time, The Galactic Council was afraid. Vulcan's voice was dangerously low. Then we must bring them back. We must force them to return to the table. The silence that followed was deafening. It was not a statement of diplomacy. It was a threat. Humanity had left peacefully. But if the Council decided to challenge their withdrawal, would they respond with the same restraint? The void left behind. Pirates and power struggles. As the Council bickered, the galaxy burned. In the Centauri expanse, a once safe trade corridor had become a hunting ground for raiders. A convoy of Zanari merchant ships, laden with high-value minerals, had been attempting to cross the sector when the attack began. Explosions tore through the void as pirate vessels, agile, deadly, and unchecked, descended upon them. The merchant ships, equipped only with light defensive measures, sent out desperate distress signals. Mayday! Mayday! We are under attack. Our shields are failing. The Zanari captain, a veteran of 100 trade runs, gritted his teeth as the enemy disabled his engines. He had never seen the pirates act so boldly before. Not while humanity had been watching. But humanity was gone, and the predators had returned. The pirate leader, a towering insectoid with a gleaming exoskeleton, transmitted a chilling message across the frequencies. No one protects you anymore. Your council is weak. The humans abandoned you. This galaxy belongs to those willing to take it. As the convoy was boarded, the Zanari crew prepared for the worst. No help was coming, because the one force that had kept the darkness at bay had walked away. Sol system, behind the shield. While the galaxy spiraled into panic behind the impenetrable shield, humanity was moving forward with Phase 2 of their plan. From the outside, the Sol system appeared sealed, unreachable, unknowable. The shimmering barrier, an impossible energy field, pulsed faintly against the blackness of space, confounding every alien sensor. But inside, a storm was brewing. On Luna Command Station, the highest-ranking leaders of humanity stood in a dimly lit war room, their faces illuminated by the glowing tactical display. At the center stood Admiral Helena Drake, Supreme Commander of the United Terran Fleet. Her steel-gray eyes scanned the holographic projections. Humanity had not simply withdrawn from the galaxy. They had cut themselves off to prepare. Phase 1 was successful, reported General Thomas Raines, head of Terran military intelligence. His deep voice echoed through the chamber. The Council is in chaos. Trade is collapsing. The outer colonies are vulnerable. They have realized just how dependent they were on us. Drake nodded, watching as the AI-generated projections estimated when the first alien fleets would attempt to break through the shield. And their response? She asked. An intelligence officer stepped forward, voice grim. They're considering military action. Some factions are even suggesting that we be forcibly reintegrated. Drake's expression didn't change. Let them try. A slow, calculated silence followed. We knew this day would come, she continued. For years, we have let them believe we were playing by their rules. But humanity does not beg. We do not kneel. And we do not allow ourselves to be leashed. She turned to the assembled leaders of the Terran Republic, her voice firm, unyielding. Activate Phase 2. If they want to test our defenses, we will show them why we built them in the first place. The order was given. The hidden fleets deep within Sol space came online. Stealth warships, invisible to standard detection, shifted into position. Orbital defense stations, long assumed to be simple monitoring platforms, revealed their true nature. Each was armed with weaponry beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. Deep within Mars' hidden research stations, Project Revenant moved into its final stages. Humanity had spent 50 years appearing to be just another species, another empire in the Council's web. That illusion was over. As the alien powers prepared for desperate diplomacy or reckless war, humanity was preparing for something else entirely. They had never been defenseless. They had never been at the mercy of the Council. And soon, the galaxy would learn the truth. Humanity hadn't retreated. They had been waiting. The first attempt to breach the shield. The Council's desperation. A reckless gamble. The Galactic Council's Grand Chamber was in a state of chaos unlike anything seen before. Diplomats shouted over one another, their voices filled with desperation, frustration, and fear. For the first time in centuries, the Council was losing control, not to an external enemy, but to a crisis of its own making. High Arbitrator Velkin of the Seraph Dominion stood at the head of the chamber, his silvered skin almost translucent under the harsh lighting. His usual confidence was gone. The humans had walked away, and in their absence, the galaxy had begun to unravel. Trade was collapsing, pirate activity was escalating, and smaller nations were considering abandoning the Council altogether. The humans had been the glue that held everything together, and now, everything was falling apart. We must act. Velkin roared, slamming his staff against the floor, commanding silence. This stalemate cannot continue. We must break through the human blockade, reach Earth, and force negotiations before the situation worsens. The statement was met with mixed reactions. Some delegates nodded in agreement, while others shifted uncomfortably. A tall, avian-like diplomat from the Zerani Concord spoke up, her golden feathers flaring in alarm. "You want to invade Terran space? That's madness. We don't even know what technology they've developed behind that shield." A bulky, reptilian warrior from the Seraph Dominion bared his sharp teeth. "We cannot afford to be afraid of an upstart species. If they refuse to negotiate, we will make them." From the back of the chamber, a quiet voice cut through the noise like a blade. "You are all making the fatal mistake." The chamber turned as Elias Carter, former Terran ambassador, stepped forward. He no longer wore the diplomatic robes of the Terran Republic. Instead, he was clad in simple, dark military attire. His presence alone sent a ripple of unease through the gathered aliens. Velkin narrowed his eyes. "You are no longer welcome here, Carter. Your people abandoned this council." Carter's cold smirk made the council members shift in discomfort. "Abandoned? No, we simply decided that we no longer needed you." Velkin slammed his fist against the podium. "Then explain this madness. Explain the shield. Explain why your people are cutting us off, while our economy crumbles, while our fleets struggle against pirate raids. We built a galactic order, and you are tearing it apart." Carter's expression darkened. "You built nothing but a house of lies and control. And you were foolish enough to believe we didn't see through it." Silence. The tension in the chamber was suffocating. Carter turned, heading toward the exit. Before he left, he uttered a final warning. "If you try to breach the shield, you will regret it. The galaxy has never seen what humanity is truly capable of, and if you test us now, you will." Then he was gone. The council chose to ignore his warning. The first contact with the shield. 3 days later, a fleet of warships from the Seraph Dominion, the Seraph Union, and the Zerani Concord gathered at the edge of Sol space. The mission was simple: test the shield, break through if possible, and assess humanity's true strength. At the command of the fleet was Admiral Threx Jorquin, a battle-hardened veteran of the Seraph Dominion. His fleet was comprised of 50 warships, including dreadnought-class battleships, rapid assault cruisers, and an array of planetary siege vessels. They were armed with the most advanced weaponry the Council had access to, weapons designed to crack open planetary defenses. Jorquin sat on his command throne, observing the massive, shimmering barrier that surrounded Sol. The energy readings made no sense. His science officer turned to him, 4 crimson eyes filled with uncertainty. "Sir, this energy field, it doesn't match anything in our database. It doesn't emit radiation, it doesn't reflect standard waves, and it seems to shift in a way we can't predict." Jorquin grunted. "No defense is impenetrable. Prepare to fire." Across the fleet, weapons powered up. On his order, the first volley was launched. A wave of plasma torpedoes and hyperkinetic rail slugs traveling at near light speed, each designed to devastate entire cityscapes. The impact was immediate. The energy barrier rippled, shifting into impossible colors. The light display was mesmerizing. But as the weapons collided, they simply vanished. Not absorbed, not deflected. Vanished. Jorquin felt an icy chill creep up his spine. What the hell? Another officer turned from his station. Sir, the weapons didn't just fail to penetrate. They don't exist anymore. Our sensors lost track of them the moment they touched the shield. That was impossible. Jorquin narrowed his eyes. Again. Full firepower. The fleet unleashed everything. Energy beams, nuclear warheads, antimatter missiles. Every weapon they had, all directed at the same point on the shield. The attack lit up the darkness of space, a spectacle visible across the sector. The result? Nothing. The shield pulsed. Then something new happened. The energy shifted, and suddenly, that Xereth flagship began losing power. Its systems flickered, lights dimming, weapons failing. Sir, we're being drained. Panic spread across the fleet as ships lost control of their engines, their reactors depleting as though something was pulling energy straight out of them. And then the shield spoke. A transmission, clear, unfiltered, in every language of the known galaxy. You were warned. Then the impossible happened. The Xereth flagship imploded. Not from an external attack. Not from a visible force. It simply collapsed in on itself, folding like a piece of paper being crushed by an unseen hand. The surviving fleet fled in terror. They had expected to find an outdated human defense grid. They had expected to break through with brute force. Instead, they had encountered something beyond their understanding. And now, for the first time in galactic history, the Council had to reckon with the fact that humanity was no longer playing by the rules of conventional warfare. Humanity watches. The next move begins. Inside Luna Command Station, Admiral Helena Drake watched the unfolding chaos on a secure tactical feed. The defensive grid had activated perfectly. She turned to her second-in-command. Their first test is complete. They now know brute force won't work. Her officer nodded. What if they try diplomacy? Drake's cold smile returned. They won't. Not yet. First, they'll try to find out what else we're hiding. Her fingers danced over the command console. Let's give them something to find. In deep space, hidden beyond the shield, something stirred. Phase 3 had begun. The hidden hand of humanity. The aftermath of failure. The Council's growing fear. The Galactic Council chamber was silent. Not the silence of contemplation or respect, but the silence of crippling fear. The aftermath of the failed attack on the shield had sent shockwaves through every corner of known space. The holographic screens replayed the moment over and over again. The Xereth flagship, a behemoth of a war vessel, collapsing in on itself like a dying star, crumpling without a single visible cause. The energy scans showed something terrifying. The ship's core hadn't exploded, it had simply ceased to exist. High Arbitrator Velkin stared at the recordings, his usual stoicism shattered. Around him, representatives of the galaxy's greatest powers sat in stunned disbelief. Some still refused to accept what had happened. A reptilian warlord from the Turrican Imperium snarled, his talons gripping the edge of his seat. It must have been some kind of trick. A gravitational anomaly, a distortion. An Erdaxian scientist interrupted, shaking his elongated head. No known technology can do that. No known science explains what we just witnessed. A murmuring rose, voices arguing, speculating, panicking. Then a deep, calm voice cut through the noise. We never knew what they were hiding. All eyes turned to Ambassador Rake Talvash of the Arcturus Federation. His species, the Arcturans, were known for their intellect, their patience. They had long studied human behavior, had often warned the Council against underestimating them. Velkin narrowed his eyes. Explain. Talvash exhaled, his long, thin fingers tapping on the glowing data slate before him. The Terrans are masterful deceivers. They played the role of the underdog, the struggling newcomers, the naive optimists. They let us believe we had them cornered. Asterisk, asterisk. His voice darkened. But what if they were never truly playing our game? A silence stretched between them. Talvash continued. We spent decades believing they were at a technological disadvantage. But they were never at a disadvantage, were they? They simply hid what they had. And now, he gestured at the screen. Now, they've shown us a glimpse of their hand, and we don't even know how many cards they're still holding. A cold realization settled in. Humanity had never been controlled by the Council. They had been biding their time. And now that time had run out. The search for weakness. The silent war begins. While the Council reeled from their failure, in the shadows, the intelligence divisions of every major power had already begun a desperate operation to find out what else humanity was hiding. The first step was espionage. Across neutral territories, dozens of infiltration teams were activated. Spies, rogue AI, black ops specialists, mercenaries, all given one mission: infiltrate human space. Their targets: 1. The shield's power source. What fueled it? How was it maintaining an impenetrable barrier across an entire star system? 2. The secret military projects. What had humanity developed behind their borders? If they could make a warship disappear with a flicker of energy, what other nightmare weapons were they hiding? 3. The psychological profile. Could they be pressured? Were there divisions among their leadership? Were there dissidents who could be manipulated? What they didn't realize was that humanity was already watching them. The hunters become the hunted. In the cold depths of space, a small blackened vessel drifted silently along the edge of the Cassiopeia expanse, a smuggler's route known for its lawlessness. Inside, a team of Tith infiltrators, elite spies trained in covert operations, worked silently. They were the best. Undetectable, efficient, ruthless. The ship's pilot, a slender insectoid being with multi-lensed eyes, whispered into his communicator. Approaching outer human space, scanners showed no active patrols. Proceeding with infiltration. They had studied human weaknesses, their tendency for emotional decision-making, their love for bureaucracy, their obsession with their own history. It made them predictable. Or so they thought. The moment they crossed the threshold into human territory, the ship's systems flickered. The infiltrators barely had time to react. A voice, deep and unshackably calm, echoed through their vessel. Unauthorized entry detected. This is Terran Blackwatch. You have 5 seconds to comply. Panic surged through the infiltrators. They had taken every precaution, used the best stealth technology. No one should have been able to see them. And yet, humanity had been waiting for them. 4. The ship's AI frantically ran scans. Nothing. No ships detected. No energy signatures. But the voice was still there. 3. One of the infiltrators tried to send an emergency transmission back to their handlers. There was no response. The signal had been cut. 2. The team's leader, a hardened veteran of 100 missions, made a snap decision. Abort. Get us out. 1. The ship vanished. Not exploded. Not disabled. Simply gone. As if it had never existed. Humanity's next move. The warning. On Luna Command Station, Admiral Helena Drake watched the feed from the Blackwatch AI systems. Another infiltrator team had been neutralized. Across Sol space, dozens of alien spies had been erased, captured, or, worse, allowed to return with carefully planted misinformation. She turned to her lead intelligence officer. Let them keep trying. Let them waste their resources. Let them think they're getting closer. The officer smirked. And when they finally realize they aren't, Drake's expression turned cold and unreadable. They won't have time to regret it. She turned back to the war map, where holograms of the Council's forces flickered. Phase 3 had begun. It was time to remind the galaxy why humanity had never been conquered. Because the greatest trick humanity ever pulled was letting the galaxy believe they were weak. And now, the truth was coming, one way or another.